I'm gonna sing, I'm gonna shout, I'm gonna let the reason out that his love goes on forever. I'm gonna take it all the way, I'm gonna praise Jesus.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Maple Minute this Thursday, April the 8th, 2021. I'm Pastor Bill, and we're today going to wrap up what the whole meaning of life's all about. But before we do, could I encourage you, if you're on Facebook, to like this video and share it so your friends can see it? We want some comments too, so if you want to post a comment, question, concern, anything you have, we'd like to help you with that as we journey through life. If you're watching on YouTube, if you would just go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and then remember to click on the updates button too, or the alert button, so that it gives you all the latest notifications when we post new videos. Once again, we want to hear from you, so if you want to post some comments, we really do want to connect, because it's all about that community of following Jesus. As we've been looking at the life of Solomon, Solomon is an old man, the wisest man to have ever lived, and Solomon has approached the subject of what is the meaning of life. He finishes it out here, and we're going to finish out the book of Ecclesiastes in chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. Two of the most profound verses that we could ever read. Solomon has been asking that question, what is life all about? And he's told us in four short things, and we're going to investigate the fourth one. He started off with telling us that life is uncertain, so we should embrace it. And certainly we know that from 2020. Life has been so uncertain. And then he told us that life is short, so we should enjoy it. And that is another truth that so often we sort of shy away from, but it is a reality. The third thing he told us is that life is mysterious, so we should examine it. And today he tells us that life is obedience. That's the ultimate end. Life is obedience, so we should express it. Solomon ponders the conclusion of this question, what is the meaning of life? That's a question most of us have, and sometimes it's followed up by, what is life after death? Or is there life after death? Solomon, though, doesn't take the typical approach you'd think when he talks about the meaning of life, because most of us, as we get to the end of his writing, you would think that he's wrapping up and ending his writing, and that's his biggest concern. Or that you would think about he is thinking about ending his life, because he is an older man and he is coming near the end of his days. But really, Solomon, what he's thinking about is the beginning of wisdom in life. All of what he's thought about comes to a head here as we finish out in chapter 12, verses 13 and 14. Solomon writes this. He says, the end of the matter, well, that's the question he had asked at the very beginning. What's the meaning of life? What's the profit of life? Under the sun, without God, with God? The end of the matter, all has been heard. He says, I've investigated every part of life, and he tells us to fear God and keep his commandments. For this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. Solomon is seeking that final treasure, the elusive meaning of life itself. So many Hollywood and famous and wealthy people have done the same thing, and yet they found themselves addicted to things that really killed them. Think about actors who died way before they should because they became addicted to drugs or alcohol. You don't even have to think of famous people, because we all know people in our lives that probably have become addicted and ended their lives way too soon because they didn't have any hope in them. This meaning of life is so important to us because it roots who we are, and that's why Solomon's directing us not to the end of things, but the beginning of wisdom in our lives. See, Solomon is hungered for happiness, and that's a deep hunger that all of us have. Happiness in our life. And before you say, well, we're not supposed to be happy in life, I don't believe that. I believe God wants us to be happy, but happy in the right areas. See, you can have no wealth, no fame, none of life's ordinary pleasures, and yet, if you know one simple thing, you would have the map to finding happiness, and that's what Solomon's trying to get us to understand. He tells us, and basically there are two steps. The first one is to fear God. This path to happiness is fearing God is the point of departure from the path that leads to misery. The path under the sun, the path that so many people have taken that leads short of life. Fear God. That's the point of departure that we need to get on. The second thing he tells us is that we should keep his commandments. That's the path of life. That's the path to happiness. See, travel is serious. Travel it seriously. Travel this path that God has given us. The eyes should be fixed ahead as we walk, not just on the past, and you will see glimpses of your destiny with God. That's what Solomon understood. Fear God and keep his commandments. He's not looking at an end of life. He's looking at a beginning of life with wisdom, godly wisdom. To fear God means to be struck with awe in his all-consuming holy presence. That's the whole idea. To stand always and forever in breathless exaltation of who he is and what he has done and how vastly and infinitely his greatness overshadow our brief existence. To embrace the reality of God. And that is, my friends, the regret of Solomon. Because Solomon was on that path and he got detoured by the women in his life, the relationships he had. He got detoured by his wealth and pleasure. He got detoured by everything that was away from God. So Solomon here is saying, hey, get on the right path. And the point of departure is to fear God, and the path itself is to keep his commandments. Just beyond the fearing of God, Solomon writes that we should keep God's commandments. That is, find out what God wants done and go and do it, regardless of the cost. All the rest, as Solomon would tell us, is vanity. It's worthlessness. It's heartache. It's wandering blindly down a path that leads to destruction. That's the idea. You know, when I was a kid growing up, my dad, who really wasn't a great singer at all, in fact, every song I felt like sounded the same. It all sounded the same tune. But he made us sing in the car because we didn't have a radio in one of the cars when I was growing up as a kid. And my dad always taught us one song in particular that we always sang. It was Trust and Obey. The words to this great song are so powerful. When we walk with the Lord in the light of his word, not in the light of our own wisdom, but in the light of his word, what a glory he sheds on our way. That's the way of wisdom. While we do his good will, he abides with us still, and with all who will trust and obey. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. See, so many people today in life are miserable because they're trying to find life under the sun, life without God. That was the life that Solomon said was vanity of vanities, like trying to catch the wind. It's worthless. It's not going to provide anything great. Wealth doesn't do it for you because when you die, you leave it all here. Fame, fortune, all those relationships, they don't do it for you. So many of us are still caught up, even though we claim to be Christ followers, we're still caught up in the pursuit of wealth, of finances, of fame, of importance. And really what God would tell us is get on the path. That is the point of departure, fear God, and then keep his commandments. That's the right path to walk on. You know, God created you, according to Blaise Pascal, he created you with a hole in your heart that only he could fill. So often we try and fill it with other things. The path to holiness, the path to happiness, the path to joy and great living is not a path towards finances or even relationships or even any of those other things. So many people try those things and they fail. Solomon says, hey, you know what? The whole matter, what is life all about? If you want the happy life, fear God. Keep his commandments. And you know what? The commandments of God, they're not hard. Because really, Jesus summed them up like this. Love God and love people. That's what we're trying to do. Love God first, and then by loving God, the best way to love God is to love others. So, as you go through and you think about the meaning of life, and as you maybe are parents teaching young people, whether you've got teenagers in your house, all the way up, I try and teach my kids even though they're grown up and they're adults too. Love others more than you love yourself. That's the path of happiness. It's not the path to owning things, it's the path to happiness. So until next time, this is Pastor Bill with your Maple Minute.
Goes on forever. His love reaches to the highest.